Intro, welcome back. I've got something special lined up for you. An ice cube sits quietly on a table. The room is cold. Nothing seems to change. 1 degree warmer still. Nothing. Another degree, no movement. 10 soothingly, without drama or noise. The ice begins to melt, not because of a single powerful moment, but because of a series of invisible changes that finally crossed a threshold. This is how real transformation happens, not in explosions of motivation, not in overnight success, but in small, almost unnoticeable actions repeated every day. We often wait for a breakthrough moment, believing change will arrive like lightning. But the truth is quieter. Change arrives like dawn's low, patient, inevitable. Look back at your own life. The person you are today was not shaped by one decision, but by thousands of small choices you barely remember making. The habits you repeat when no one is watching are writing your future in silence. This book is not about forcing yourself to become better through willpower alone. It is not a collection of aggressive productivity hacks or unrealistic routines. It is a journey into understanding how identity is built, one small habit at a time. We do not rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our systems. Goals are about results, but systems are about who you become. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you are becoming. When you choose to read instead of scroll, you vote for focus. When you show up, despite resistance, you vote for resilience. When you quit too early, you vote for the identity you are trying to escape. This book invites you to slow down and observe the quiet mechanics of change, to notice how tiny behaviors compound into character, to understand that lasting transformation is not about changing what you want, but changing who you believe you are. Take a deep breath. You do not need to reinvent your life today. You only need to take one small step that aligns with the person you wish to become. The rest will follow 1 degree at a time. For more amazing videos, subscribe to our channel. Smash that like button, comment your thoughts, and share with friends. Don't forget the bell icon. Chapter 1. The Invisible Power of Small Beginnings. Every meaningful change in life begins quietly. It does not announce itself with confidence or certainty. It does not arrive fully formed. It starts small, often so small that it feels insignificant. Most people overlook this stage because it lacks drama. We are taught to respect big decisions, bold moves, and intense effort. We celebrate dramatic turnarounds and overnight success stories, even though they are almost always illusions created after the fact. What we fail to see is that behind every visible transformation lies a long period of invisible preparation, where small actions were repeated long before results appeared. Think about how habits actually form. No one wakes up one day as a disciplined person or a distracted one. No one suddenly becomes healthy, creative, confident, or lost. These identities are built slowly, through patterns of behavior repeated so often that they begin to feel natural. At first, these behaviors feel intentional. Later, they feel automatic. Eventually, they feel like who you are. This is the invisible power of small beginnings. Each tiny action is a seed. On its own, it seems harmless, even meaningless. But given time, it grows roots, then structure, then identity. The problem is that the early stages of change are discouraging. You read a few pages of a book and feel no smarter. You exercise for a week and see no difference in the mirror. You practice a skill and still feel clumsy. Because the rewards are delayed, the mind assumes the effort is wasted. This is where most people quit. Not because they lack ability, but because they misjudge progress. They expect linear growth in a world that works through accumulation. They expect visible rewards for invisible work. Nature does not work that way. Bamboo spends years growing underground before it ever breaks the surface. Glaciers shape landscapes through pressure applied slowly over time. Even trust between people is built not through grand gestures, but through small, consistent acts that signal reliability. Life favors those who understand patience, consistency, and quiet persistence. Habits follow the same law. What makes habits powerful is not their intensity, but their frequency. A small action repeated daily has more influence over your future than a massive effort performed once in a while. Reading 10 pages every day will change your mind more than reading 100 pages once a month. Saving a small amount consistently will outperform occasional bursts of financial discipline. Showing up when motivation is low builds more character than showing up only when you feel inspired. The mind may crave intensity, but identity is shaped by repetition. There is another reason small habits matter. They reduce resistance. Big changes trigger fear. They threaten the identity you currently hold. When you attempt drastic transformation, the mind reacts defensively. It searches for comfort, familiarity, and escape. Small habits, on the other hand, feel safe. They do not challenge your self-image aggressively. They slip past your inner resistance. You do not need confidence to take a small step. You do not need motivation to begin something easy. This is why small beginnings are not weak. They are strategic. Each time you repeat a habit, you reinforce a belief about yourself. When you keep a promise, even a small one, you begin to see yourself as someone who follows through. When you break a promise repeatedly, you quietly teach yourself that your word does not matter. These lessons accumulate over time. Your behavior and your self-image begin to align. This is why change becomes easier once identity shifts. You'll no longer act out of force, but out of alignment. You do not struggle to be consistent because consistency feels natural to who you believe you are. Many people try to change outcomes without changing identity. They want better results, but they keep the same. They want success, but still see themselves as someone who. They want confidence, but still identify as someone who avoids discomfort. This creates internal friction. Sustainable change does not begin with asking, "What do I want to achieve?" It begins with asking, "Who do I want to become?" Habits are the bridge between these two questions. Small beginnings also teach humility. They remind you that mastery is earned, not granted. They force you to focus on process instead of applause. When no one is watching, when progress feels slow, when effort goes unnoticed, you are given a choice: continue anyway, or quit quietly. Each time you choose to continue, you strengthen something deeper than skill. You strengthen and self-respect is one of the most powerful forces in human behavior. It is important to understand that habits are not just tools for productivity. They are expressions of values. What you repeat daily is what you truly prioritize, regardless of what you say. Your calendar, your energy, and your attention reveal your real beliefs. This is uncomfortable, but also liberating, because if habits created your current reality, habits can also reshape it. You are not trapped by your past patterns. You are influenced by them. But influence is not destiny. The challenge is learning to trust the process when results are delayed. This requires a different mindset, one that values trajectory over speed. It means measuring success not by how far you have gone, but by whether you showed up today. It means understanding that consistency is not perfection. Missing once is an accident. Missing twice is the beginning of a pattern. The goal is not to be flawless, but to return quickly. Small beginnings change the way you relate to failure. When goals are massive, failure feels personal and overwhelming. When habits are small, failure becomes information, not identity. You adjust, you refine, you continue. This creates resilience. You stop seeing setbacks as proof of inadequacy and start seeing them as part of the process. Over time, this mindset becomes one of your greatest strengths. As this chapter closes, remember 'tis the future version of you is being built today, not through dramatic moments, but through ordinary choices. The smallest action you take consistently is shaping your direction more than the biggest decision you make occasionally. You do not need to transform your life all at once. You only need to begin. Quietly, consistently. One small step that feels almost too easy to matter, because that is where real change always starts. Chapter 2. Identity Before achievement, most people approach change from the outside in. They focus on what they want to get. More money, better health, stronger discipline, deeper focus. They set goals, create plans, and push themselves toward outcomes. Sometimes this works for a while, but often the change fades. Old habits return, motivation disappears, and people blame themselves for lacking willpower. What they rarely question is the direction of change itself. Lasting transformation does not begin with achievement. It begins with identity. Every habit you perform is a reflection of how you see yourself. You do not rise early because you want to be productive. You rise early because you see yourself as someone who values their time. You do not exercise consistently because you want a fit body. You exercise because you believe you are someone who takes care of themselves. Behavior follows belief. When belief and behavior are aligned, habits feel natural. When they are misaligned, habits feel like a constant struggle. This is why so many goals fail. People try to act like someone they do not yet believe they are. They attempt disciplined behavior while still holding the identity of a procrastinator. They chase confidence while still seeing themselves as someone who avoids discomfort. This creates internal resistance. The mind always works to protect identity. If your actions threaten how you see yourself, your subconscious will sabotage consistency, no matter how logical the goal seems. Identity is shaped through evidence. The mind asks a simple question. What kind of person would do this? Every time you act, you provide an answer. When you write one paragraph, you are not just writing. You are casting a vote for the identity of a writer. When you choose to stop after one cigarette, you are voting for the identity of someone who values control. These votes are small, but they accumulate. Identity is not declared. It is demonstrated. This is where small habits become powerful. They make identity change believable. Telling yourself, I am disciplined, feels false if your behavior does not support it. But telling yourself, I am someone who shows up for 2 minutes, feels achievable. The mind accepts what feels consistent. Over time, these small demonstrations stack up. Eventually, the new identity feels earned. And once identity shifts, behavior no longer requires force. You act in alignment because it feels like the honest thing to do. Notice how language shapes this process. When people say, I'm trying to quit, they keep the identity of a quitter in motion. When they say, I don't smoke, they signal a different One phrase keeps the struggle alive. The other closes the debate. This is not about pretending. It is about choosing words that reflect the person you are becoming, not the habit you are fighting. Identity-based change also changes how you handle failure. When goals are the focus, failure feels like proof that you are not good enough. When identity is the focus, failure becomes feedback. One missed habit does not threaten who you are becoming. It simply shows where the system needs adjustment. You stop asking, why am I so weak? And start asking, what would a person like me do next? This shift creates self-compassion without complacency. There is a deeper layer here. Identity answers the question of meaning. Goals are temporary. Once they achieve bed, they lose their power. Identity is continuous. It gives direction beyond milestones. If your goal is to run a marathon, what happens after you cross the finish line? If your identity is that of a runner, movement continues naturally. This is why identity-based habits last longer than outcome-based ones. They are not tied to a single finish line. Many people fear identity change because it feels abstract. Results feel tangible. Identity feels vague. But identity becomes clear through behavior. You do not need to define yourself perfectly. You only need to act consistently enough for the definition to emerge. Clarity follows action, not the other way around. This removes pressure. You are not required to know exactly who you will become. You are only required to act in small ways that align with the direction you choose. There is also freedom in this approach. You stop chasing motivation and start building evidence. Motivation is unreliable because it depends on emotion. Identity is stable because it depends on repetition. On days when energy is low, identity carries you forward. You do not ask whether you feel like showing up. You ask whether this is what someone like you does, The answer becomes obvious. Identity-based habits also change how you view time. Instead of asking how fast results will come, you ask whether today's action is aligned. This removes anxiety. You stop rushing the process. You trust that consistency will take care of outcomes. This trust is not blind optimism. It is based on understanding how systems work. What you repeat becomes who you are, and who you are determines what you achieve. As you move forward, remember this principle. Every habit is a vote, not a verdict. You are never locked into a single action. But patterns matter. The goal is not to be perfect, but to be consistent enough that your identity begins to shift. When that happens, habits stop feeling like obligations and start feeling like expressions. Before the next chapter, pause for a moment. Ask yourself not what you want to achieve, but who you want to become. Then ask a simpler question. What is one small action that person would take today? Do not aim to impress yourself. Aim to be honest. That is how identity is built. Quietly, repeatedly, one vote at a time. Chapter 3. The system that shapes your life. We like to believe that success is the result of strong desire and clear goals. We imagine motivated people waking up each day driven by purpose, pushing themselves toward distant achievements. But when you look closely at how life actually unfolds, a different pattern appears. Outcomes are not shaped by what you want once in a while. They are shaped by what you do every day. And what you do every day is determined less by motivation and more by the systems you live inside. A system is the collection of habits, environments, cues, and routines that quietly guide your behavior. It is the path of least resistance you follow without thinking. Your morning routine is a system. Your phone usage is a system. The way you respond to stress, boredom, or success is a system. These systems operate whether you are aware of them or not. That is their power. They shape your life in the background long before results become visible. This is why goals often disappoint. Goals set direction, but systems create progress. You can set the same goal as someone else and still end up in a completely different place because your systems are different. Two people may want to be healthy, but one lives in a system that makes movement easy and junk food inconvenient, while the other lives in a system that encourages sitting and constant snacking. Over time, the system wins, not because of willpower, but because of consistency. Focusing only on goals creates a dangerous illusion. It convinces you that happiness and success exist somewhere in the future. Once I achieve this, then I'll be satisfied. But goals are momentary. The moment you reach one, your mind moves on to the next. Systems, on the other hand, allow satisfaction in the present. When you fall in love with the process, not just the outcome, progress becomes sustainable. You stop living for a finish line and start living in alignment. Another weakness of goal obsession is that it encourages extreme effort followed by burnout. People push hard, achieve something, then relax completely. This cycle creates instability. Systems create balance. They are designed to be repeatable, not heroic. They do not require you to be at your best. They only require you to show up. Over time, this steadiness outperforms intensity. Your current results are not a reflection of your potential. They are a reflection of your systems. This can feel uncomfortable because it removes excuses, but it is also empowering. If systems created your current reality, systems can create a new one. You do not need more motivation. You need better design. Change the system, and behavior follows naturally. Environment plays a central role in this design. Most habits are responses to cues around you. You check your phone because it is within reach. You snack because food is visible. You procrastinate because distraction is easier than focus. The environment shapes choices before conscious thought appears. This is why relying on self-control is fragile. Self-control is a limited resource. Environment is constant. When you design your environment intentionally, good habits become easier and bad habits become harder. A book placed on your desk invites reading. A phone placed in another room invites focus. A clear workspace invites clarity of thought. These changes may seem trivial, but they alter the system, and systems, not intentions, determine behavior. Systems also include the people you surround yourself with. Human behavior is contagious. We adopt the habits, language, and standards of those around us. If consistency is normal in your environment, it feels natural to be consistent. If distraction is normal, focus feels strange. This does not mean you must abandon people. It means you must be aware of influence. Awareness gives you choice. Another important element of systems is feedback. Systems that provide immediate feedback are more likely to persist. When you track a habit, check a box, or reflect briefly at the end of the day, you create a loop. Action leads to acknowledgement. This reinforces behavior. Without feedback, habits fade into forgetfulness. With feedback, they become intentional. It is also important to understand that systems do not need to be perfect. They need to be flexible. They are designed around reality, not ideal conditions. Is the cue unclear? Is the environment working against you? Small adjustments in design can lead to large changes in outcome. This approach replaces guilt with curiosity. As this chapter comes to a close, remember this truth. You do not rise to the level of your goals. If you want to change your life, do not focus only on what you want. Focus on what you repeat. Over time, the system will do the work for you, even on days when motivation is gone. Chapter 3. The system that shapes your life. We imagine motivated people waking up each day, driven by purpose, pushing themselves toward distant achievements. And what you do every day is determined less by motivation and more by the systems you live inside. A system is the collection of habits, environments, cues, and routines that quietly guide your behavior. It is the path of least resistance you follow, without thinking. Your morning routine is a system. Your phone usage is a system. The way you respond to stress, boredom, or success is a system. These systems operate whether you are aware of them or not. You can set the same goal as someone else and still end up in a completely different place because your systems are different. Two people may want to be healthy, but one lives in a system that makes movement easy and junk food inconvenient, while the other lives in a system that encourages sitting and constant snacking. Over time, the system wins. The moment you reach one, your mind moves on to the next. You stop living for a finish line and start living in alignment. People push hard, achieve something, then relax completely. This cycle creates instability. Systems create balance. They do not require you to be at your best. They only require you to show up. Over time, this steadiness outperforms intensity. This can feel uncomfortable because it removes excuses, but it is also empowering. If systems created your current reality, systems can create a new one. You do not need more motivation. You need better design. Change the system, and behavior follows naturally. Environment plays a central role in this design. Most habits are responses to cues around you. You check your phone because it is within reach. You snack because food is visible. You procrastinate because distraction is easier than focus. The environment shapes choices before conscious thought appears. This is why relying on self-control is fragile. Self-control is a limited resource. Environment is constant. When you design your environment intentionally, good habits become easier and bad habits become harder. A book placed on your desk invites reading. A phone placed in another room invites focus. A clear workspace invites clarity of thought. These changes may seem trivial, but they alter the system, and systems, not intentions, determine behavior. Systems also include the people you surround yourself with. Human behavior is contagious. We adopt the habits, language, and standards of those around us. If consistency is normal in your environment, it feels natural to be consistent. If distraction is normal, focus feels strange. This does not mean you must abandon people. It means you must be aware of influence. Awareness gives you choice. Another important element of systems is feedback. Systems that provide immediate feedback are more likely to persist. When you track a habit, check a box, or reflect briefly at the end of the day, you create a loop. Action leads to acknowledgement. This reinforces behavior. Without feedback, habits fade into forgetfulness. With feedback, they become intentional. It is also important to understand that systems do not need to be perfect. They need to be flexible. Life changes. Energy fluctuates. Systems that break under pressure are not useful. The best systems adapt. They allow for low-energy days without collapse. They are designed around reality, not ideal conditions. When something is not working, resist the urge to blame yourself. Instead, examine the system. Ask, what is making the behavior difficult? Is the habit too large? Is the cue unclear? Is the environment working against you? Small adjustments in design can lead to large changes in outcome. This approach replaces guilt with curiosity. As this chapter comes to a close, remember this truth. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. If you want to change your life, do not focus only on what you want. Focus on what you repeat. Over time, the system will do the work for you, even on days when motivation is gone. Chapter 4. The role of environment in human behavior. Human behavior feels personal, but it is deeply environmental. We like to believe our choices come from strong values and conscious decisions. Yet most of what we do each day is a reaction to what surrounds us. The room you sit in, the objects within reach, the sounds you hear, and the people around you are constantly shaping your actions. Long before willpower is involved, environment has already nudged you in a direction. This is why habits can feel automatic. You do not decide to check your phone every few minutes. Your hand moves before thought appears. You do not plan to snack mindlessly. The food is visible, and the behavior follows. The environment presents a cue, and the brain responds. This process is efficient, not weak. The brain evolved to conserve energy by automating repeated behaviors. The problem arises when the environment is designed by default rather than by intention. Most people try to change habits by changing themselves. They promise to be more disciplined, more focused, more motivated. But discipline is fragile when the environment constantly pulls you in the opposite direction. A well-designed environment can achieve what motivation cannot. When the right behavior is the easiest behavior, consistency becomes natural. Consider how small environmental changes alter behavior without effort. When healthy food is visible and unhealthy food is hidden, choices shift. When a notebook is open on the desk, writing feels like an invitation. When notifications are silenced, focus deepens without force. These changes do not require, they require awareness. Once you see how environment influences action, you stop fighting yourself and start redesigning your environment. Also shapes identity. The spaces you inhabit send signals about who you are. A cluttered space communicates chaos. A clean space communicates order. A workspace dedicated to a single purpose trains the mind to enter that mode more easily. Over time, these signals become internalized. You begin to act in ways that match the environment you have created. This influence extends beyond physical space into digital environments. Your phone is not a neutral tool. It is an environment filled with cues designed to capture attention. Endless scrolling, notifications, and algorithms all shape behavior through exposure. If your digital environment is chaotic, your attention will be too. Designing a calmer digital space is not about restriction. It is about reclaiming agency. People are part of your environment as well. The habits of those around you create a social norm. When certain behaviors are normal, they feel safe. When they are rare, they feel uncomfortable. This is why joining a group where the behavior you want is already standard can accelerate change. You are not forcing yourself to be different. You are aligning with what feels normal in that environment. Another subtle aspect of environment is friction. Every behavior has a level of friction attached to it. When friction is low, behavior is easy. When friction is high, behavior becomes unlikely. You can use this to your advantage. Add friction to habits you want to reduce and remove friction from habits you want to build. Place distractions out of reach. Place tools for good habits within reach. These small changes compound. Many people underestimate how much effort they waste resisting their environment. They rely on willpower daily, draining energy that could be used creatively. When the environment supports your goals, energy is freed. Focus improves. Stress reduces. Progress becomes smoother. You stop feeling like you are swimming upstream. Environment design is not about perfection. It is about direction. You do not need a flawless setup. You need a supportive one. Even a small shift can change behavior dramatically over time. The key is to notice what triggers your actions and adjust accordingly. As you move forward, pay attention to your surroundings. Ask yourself what behaviors your environment is encouraging. Then ask what small change could make the right action easier today. You do not need to change who you are. You need to change what surrounds you. When the environment is aligned, behavior follows naturally, and habits begin to work for you instead of against you. Chapter 5. Making habits obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying. Every habit follows a pattern. It begins with a cue, moves into an action, and ends with a reward. This loop runs constantly in the background of your life, shaping your behavior with quiet efficiency. Understanding this structure gives you leverage. When you know how habits are built, you can redesign them. Change does not require force. It requires alignment with how the mind naturally works. The first step in building better habits is awareness. You cannot change what you do not notice. Many behaviors run on autopilot, triggered by familiar cues. You reach for your phone when you feel bored. You snack when you feel stressed. You procrastinate when a task feels unclear. The cue appears, the habit follows, and the result feels inevitable. But once you recognize the cue, you create a moment of choice. Making a habit obvious means clarifying its cue. When the cue is hidden or vague, the habit struggles to form. When it is clear and visible, the habit has a place to begin. This is why simple reminders work. A book placed on your pillow reminds you to read. A water bottle on your desk reminds you to drink. These cues reduce reliance on memory and motivation. They bring the habit into your field of attention. The second element is attraction. We repeat behaviors that feel rewarding, not those that feel logical. The brain is wired to seek pleasure and avoid discomfort. If a habit feels dull or punishing, it will not last. Making a habit attractive does not mean turning life into constant entertainment. It means pairing the habit with something that creates positive emotion. This could be music while exercising, a pleasant environment while working, or a sense of progress through tracking. Attraction creates momentum. The third element is ease. The easier a habit is, the more likely it is to be repeated. Complexity creates friction. Friction creates avoidance. When habits are large and demanding, they invite excuses. When they are small and simple, they invite action. This is why lowering the bar is powerful. Start with 2 minutes. Start with 1 page. Start with 1 repetition. Ease builds consistency, and consistency builds identity. Ease is also about reducing steps. If a habit requires too many actions before it begins, it will fail. Prepare in advance. Lay out clothes the night before. Open the document you plan to write in. Remove unnecessary decisions. Each decision consumes energy. Systems that conserve energy outperform those that demand constant effort. The final element is satisfaction. Behavior that is immediately rewarding is more likely to be repeated. The challenge with good habits is that their rewards are often delayed. The challenge with bad habits is that their rewards are immediate. To reverse this, you must bring a sense of satisfaction into the present moment. This can be as simple as checking off a habit, reflecting briefly, or acknowledging progress. Satisfaction closes the loop and teaches the brain that the behavior is worth repeating. These 4 elements work together. When a habit is obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying, resistance fades. The habit fits naturally into your life. It does not feel like a battle. It feels like a rhythm. This is the goal of habit design, not discipline for its own sake, but harmony between intention and action. The same principles can be used to break bad habits. Make them invisible by removing cues. Make them unattractive by highlighting their true cost. Make them difficult by adding friction. Make them unsatisfying by removing rewards. You do not need to rely on shame or punishment. You need to change the structure that supports the behavior. One of the most important lessons here is that habits do not require motivation every day. They require design once. When the design is right, the habit runs automatically. This frees mental space. You stop negotiating with yourself. You simply act. As this chapter ends, reflect on one habit you want to build. Ask yourself, how can I make it more obvious, more attractive, easier, and more satisfying? Do not aim for perfection. Aim for alignment. Small adjustments in design can lead to profound changes in behavior. When habits are built in harmony with human nature, change becomes not only possible, but inevitable. Chapter 6. Consistency over motivation. Motivation is often misunderstood. We treat it as the fuel of action, believing that if we could just feel motivated enough, change would become easy. We wait for the right mood, the right moment, the surge of inspiration that will carry us forward. But motivation is unstable. It rises and falls with emotion, energy, and circumstance. Consistency, on the other hand, does not depend on how you feel. It depends on what you do, again and again, especially when motivation is absent. The most reliable people are not the most motivated ones. They are the ones who have learned to act without negotiating with their emotions. They understand that feelings are temporary, but systems endure. When action becomes part of a routine, it no longer requires excitement. It becomes normal. This is why consistency is more powerful than motivation. Motivation gets you started. Consistency keeps you going. Relying on motivation creates a fragile relationship with progress. On good days, you move forward. On bad days, you stop completely. This creates uneven results and constant frustration. Consistency smooths the path. Even small actions performed regularly outperform sporadic bursts of effort. Progress may feel slower, but it is steadier, and steady progress compounds. Consistency also changes how you experience effort. When a behavior is repeated, the brain becomes efficient at performing it. What once felt difficult becomes familiar. Familiarity reduces resistance. Over time, the habit requires less energy, not more. This is why starting small matters. Small habits are easier to repeat. Repetition builds familiarity. Familiarity builds ease. Another reason consistency matters is trust. When you show up for yourself regularly, you build self-trust. Each completed habit is a quiet promise kept. Over time, this trust becomes part of your identity. You stop questioning whether you will follow through. You expect Italiano. This expectation changes behavior automatically. You no longer need to convince yourself. You simply act in alignment with who you believe you are. Consistency does not mean intensity. It means reliability. It means choosing an action you can sustain on your worst days, not your best ones. Many people design habits based on ideal conditions. When life becomes stressful, those habits collapse. Sustainable habits are designed for reality. They adapt to low energy and limited time. They prioritize showing up over performing perfectly. One of the biggest obstacles to consistency is the all-or-nothing mindset. When people miss a day, they feel they have failed. This emotional reaction often leads to quitting entirely. Consistency is not about never missing. It is about returning quickly. Missing once is a natural part of life. Missing twice is where patterns begin. The skill is not avoiding failure. It is recovering from it without judgment. Consistency also benefits from rhythm. Attaching habits to existing routines makes them easier to repeat. When a habit has a clear place in your day, it becomes expected. This reduces decision fatigue. You are not asking whether you will act. You are simply following a sequence. Rhythm turns effort into flow. Another important element is patience. Consistency works slowly. Results often lag behind effort. This delay can be discouraging if you are measuring progress only by outcomes. Instead, measure by adherence. Did you show up today? Did you follow the system? When adherence becomes the metric, progress feels immediate. Each day becomes a success, regardless of visible results. Over time, consistency creates momentum. What begins as effort becomes habit. What begins as habit becomes identity. What begins as identity becomes destiny. This progression is subtle but powerful. It does not rely on dramatic change. It relies on quiet repetition. As this chapter comes to a close, release the pressure to feel motivated. You do not need to feel ready to act. You need to act in small ways that are repeatable. Choose consistency over intensity. Choose reliability over excitement. When you do, progress becomes inevitable. Not because you feel inspired, but because you have built a system that carries you forward day after day, regardless of mood. Chapter 7. The Plateau of Hidden Progress. One of the most discouraging moments in any journey of change is the feeling that nothing is working. You show up. You repeat the habit. You follow the system. And yet, results seem absent. No visible improvement. No external validation. No clear sign that effort is paying off. This phase is where most people quit. Not because change is impossible, but because progress is invisible. What they are experiencing is the plateau of hidden progress. Growth rarely appears in a straight line. It happens beneath the surface long before it becomes obvious. Skills are being refined. Neural pathways are strengthening. Discipline is forming. And identity is shifting, all without immediate evidence. This hidden work is real, even when it feels unreal. The danger lies in misinterpreting silence as failure. We live in a culture that celebrates quick wins. We expect immediate feedback. When progress does not appear quickly, doubt creeps in. The mind begins to question the value of effort. Is this worth it? Am I wasting my time? These questions feel rational, but they are based on incomplete information. They ignore the accumulation happening below awareness. Think of learning a language. 4 weeks, it feels confusing. Words blur together. Understanding is partial. Then one day, comprehension clicks. This moment feels sudden, but it is built on weeks of unseen effort. The same pattern appears in fitness, creativity, confidence, and focus. The breakthrough is the result of patient consistency, not sudden luck. The plateau tests belief. It asks whether you are committed to the process or only to the outcome. Those who quit during this phase believe progress must always feel rewarding. Those who continue understand that reward is often delayed. This understanding separates temporary effort from lasting change. Hidden progress also reshapes identity quietly. Each time you show up, despite lack of evidence, you reinforce a deeper belief that your actions are not dependent on immediate reward. This belief strengthens resilience. You become someone who trusts the process. This trust changes how you relate to discomfort. Discomfort no longer signals danger. It signals growth. One reason the plateau feels so heavy is because the brain is wired to notice change, not consistency. When something becomes routine, it fades into the background. You stop noticing effort because it has become normal. This can create the illusion that nothing is happening, when in reality, consistency has already been integrated into your identity. Comparison worsens this illusion. When you compare your hidden progress to someone else's visible success, you overlook their invisible work. You see their outcome, not their process. This comparison distorts reality and undermines patience. Everyone's timeline is different. Everyone's plateau lasts a different length of time. Progress is personal. The key to surviving the plateau is redefining success. If success is only visible results, motivation will fade. If success is showing up, momentum remains. When you measure progress by adherence rather than outcome, the plateau loses its power. Each repetition becomes a win, regardless of external validation. Another important strategy is reflection. Occasionally looking back reveals change that daily observation misses. Patterns become visible over time. What felt stagnant may reveal quiet improvement when viewed from a broader perspective. Reflection reconnects effort with meaning. The plateau also teaches humility. It reminds you that growth cannot be rushed. It forces you to let go of control over outcomes and focus on actions. This humility strengthens character. It shifts attention from ego to process. And process is where real change lives. As this chapter ends, remember this truth. Lack of visible progress does not mean lack of progress. The work you are doing now is shaping your future self, even if you cannot yet see it. Stay with the process. Trust the accumulation. One day, the results will appear, not as a surprise, but as the natural consequence of everything you did when no one was watching. Chapter 8. The Compound Effect of Habits. Change does not occur in dramatic bursts. It occurs quietly, steadily, and invisibly through the accumulation of small actions repeated consistently over time. This is the principle of compounding applied to human behavior. Just as money grows slowly through compound interest, habits grow slowly through repeated practice. Each action is a deposit into your future, and over months and years, the impact becomes profound. Most people underestimate the power of small behaviors because they judge them in isolation. One workout does not make you fit. One page read does not make you knowledgeable. One healthy meal does not make you slim. But these isolated actions are not meaningless. They are seeds. When repeated, they grow roots, branches, and eventually results that feel exponential. The compound effect is invisible in the short term, but undeniable in the long term. Compounding works both ways. Small negative habits, ignored repeatedly, accumulate into significant problems. A missed workout today is harmless. Repeated over weeks, months, or years, it creates weakness. A few extra calories occasionally may seem trivial. Over time, they transform your body. Ignored, small errors and neglect accumulate into larger failures. The same principle that produces success can produce ruin if direction is neglected. This principle emphasizes patience. People often quit because results are delayed. They expect progress to be immediate, visible, and dramatic. When reality does not conform, frustration arises. Compounding requires a shift in perspective. The focus is not on instant feedback, but on long-term trajectory. You may not notice the impact today, but in a year, the difference is undeniable. Consistency is the engine of compounding. Each small habit repeated daily contributes to cumulative growth. Writing 10 minutes a day leads to hundreds of pages in a year. Saving a small amount consistently leads to substantial wealth. Practicing a skill daily transforms competence from beginner to expert. These incremental improvements, though invisible, shape outcomes profoundly. The compound effect also applies to identity. Every small action casts a vote for the type of person you are becoming. Choosing to read, to exercise, to meditate, to be kind. Each vote accumulates. Eventually, your identity aligns with the repeated behaviors. You do not need to declare a new identity explicitly. It emerges naturally through accumulation. Compounding is amplified by systems. Well-designed systems ensure small actions occur automatically, reducing reliance on motivation or willpower. Systems minimize friction and maximize efficiency, allowing positive habits to repeat without constant deliberation. Over time, systems reinforce the compound effect, embedding growth into daily life. It is important to note that compounding is not linear. Progress often feels invisible. Then, sudden breakthroughs occur. Skill mastery, personal transformation, or body changes can appear abrupt, but they are always the result of slow accumulation. This delayed effect tests patience and belief. It requires trust in the process and in your consistency. The compound effect also reinforces accountability. Every action matters, no matter how small. There is no insignificant behavior in the long run. Awareness of compounding creates responsibility. You begin to notice subtle decisions, how you spend time, attention, and energy, because these tiny inputs shape your long-term trajectory. Moreover, compounding encourages focusing on the long-term system rather than individual outcomes. When you concentrate on doing the right things repeatedly, results follow naturally. Obsession with immediate results leads to frustration. Obsession with process leads to mastery. Systems and compounding together create unstoppable growth over time. Finally, the beauty of compounding is its multiplicative nature. Small positive habits, repeated consistently, do not just add, they multiply. Each improvement builds upon the last. The person who reads a little each day does not just know more, they think differently, act differently, and make better decisions. The person who trains consistently does not just become stronger, they develop discipline, resilience, and confidence. Compound growth transforms both outcomes and identity. As this chapter concludes, internalize this. The small, repeated actions you take today are far more influential than any single moment of inspiration or effort. Growth is quiet, invisible, and cumulative. Trust in the compound effect. Keep showing up. Over time, your consistent efforts will accumulate into extraordinary change, transforming your life in ways that will seem almost miraculous but are in fact the natural result of patience, persistence, and wise action. Chapter 9. Breaking Bad Habits Without Fighting Yourself. Most people try to break bad habits through force. They rely on guilt, shame, strict rules, and self-criticism. When they fail, they conclude that something is wrong with them. This approach misunderstands how habits work. Bad habits are not signs of weakness. They are signs of systems that once served a purpose. To break them, you do not need to fight yourself. You need to understand yourself. Every bad habit solves a problem, at least temporarily. Procrastination reduces anxiety. Overeating provides comfort. Endless scrolling offers escape. These habits are not random. They are responses. When you try to eliminate a habit without addressing the need it fulfills, the mind resists. It will search for the same relief in another form. This is why suppression rarely works long term. The first step in breaking a bad habit is awareness without judgment. Notice when the habit appears and what emotion precedes it. Is it boredom, stress, loneliness, or fatigue? The habit is often a coping mechanism, not a character flaw. When you remove judgment, curiosity takes its place. Curiosity opens the door to change. Once the underlying trigger is clear, the focus shifts from elimination to replacement. You cannot simply remove a habit and leave a void. The brain dislikes emptiness. It seeks stimulation and relief. If a bad habit is removed without a substitute, it will return. Replacement habits work because they satisfy the same need in a healthier way. When stress triggers mindless scrolling, a short walk or deep breathing can provide relief. When boredom triggers, snacking, engagement, or movement can interrupt the loop. Another powerful strategy is reducing exposure to cues. Bad habits are often initiated by visible or frequent triggers. When cues are removed, the habit weakens naturally. This is not avoidance. It is intelligent design. You are not testing your willpower constantly. You are protecting it. Distance creates clarity. Friction plays an important role here. When a habit is easy, it thrives. When it becomes difficult, it fades. Adding small obstacles can dramatically reduce repetition. Logging out of apps, storing unhealthy food out of reach, or creating time delays introduces pause. In that pause, awareness returns. Choice becomes possible. It is also important to reframe identity during this process. If you see yourself as someone trying to quit, struggle remains central. If you see yourself as someone who no longer engages in that behavior, the habit loses identity support. This shift is subtle but powerful. You are not depriving yourself. You are aligning with who you are becoming. Breaking bad habits also requires patience. Just as good habits compound slowly, bad habits weaken gradually. Slips will happen. They are not failures. They are data. Each slip reveals a trigger or weakness in the system. Adjustments, not punishment, create progress. Compassion sustains effort far longer than criticism. Another overlooked factor is energy. Many bad habits occur when energy is low. Fatigue reduces improving sleep, nutrition, and recovery often reduces bad habits automatically. You are not fixing the habit directly. You are fixing the conditions that make the habit attractive. Social environment matters as well. Certain behaviors feel normal in certain groups. When you change your environment or limit exposure to reinforcing influences, habits lose momentum. This does not require a confrontation. Sometimes subtle distance is enough to create change. Perhaps the most freeing realization is this: you are not required to win every battle. You are required to improve the system. Progress is measured not by perfection, but by reduced frequency, faster recovery, and increased awareness. When these improve, change is happening. As this chapter closes, remember that bad habits are not enemies to be destroyed. They are signals to be understood. When you listen instead of fight, design instead of punish, replace instead of suppress, habits lose their grip naturally. You do not change by becoming harsher with yourself. You change by becoming wiser. Chapter 10. How to stay on track when life gets messy, no matter how well designed your habits are. Life will interrupt them. Plans break. Energy drops. Unexpected responsibilities appear. Stress, illness, failure, and change disrupt routines without warning. Many people see these moments as proof that habits do not work. In reality, these moments are the true test of whether habits are built for real life or only for ideal conditions. The mistake most people make is designing habits for their best days. They imagined high motivation, plenty of time, and clear focus. When reality does not match this picture, the system collapses. Sustainable habits are not built for perfect circumstances. They are built to survive chaos. They are flexible, forgiving, and simple enough to continue even when life is messy. Staying on track does not mean staying perfect. It means staying connected to the process. When routines are disrupted, the goal shifts from performance to continuity. Doing less is often the correct response. A short walk replaces a long workout. One paragraph replaces an hour of writing. These small actions protect identity. They remind you that you are still the kind of person who shows up. This mindset prevents the spiral of discouragement. When people miss their routine entirely, they often experience guilt. Guilt leads to avoidance. Avoidance leads to quitting. By lowering the standard temporarily, you keep the habit alive. Continuity matters more than intensity during difficult periods. Another key to staying on track is planning for disruption. Instead of asking how to be consistent when everything goes right, ask how to respond when things go wrong. What is the smallest version of the habit you can perform on your worst days? This question builds resilience into the system. It prepares you for reality rather than fantasy. Emotional regulation also plays a crucial role. Stress and negative emotions often trigger old habits. During chaotic periods, the mind seeks comfort and familiarity. Awareness of this pattern reduces self-blame. You are not failing. You are responding to stress. Creating healthy comfort strategies in advance reduces reliance on destructive habits. Self-talk becomes especially important during setbacks. Harsh internal dialogue increases pressure and reduces flexibility. Supportive self-talk encourages recovery. Speak to yourself as you would to someone you care about. This is not weakness. It is strategic compassion. People who recover quickly are not those who avoid mistakes, but those who respond kindly to them. Another helpful strategy is anchoring habits to identity rather than schedule. When time is unpredictable, routines tied to strict schedules break. Isly, habits tied to identity adapt. Instead of saying, "I must work out at 6 a.m., think, "I am someone who moves daily." This allows flexibility without abandonment. During chaotic times, it is also important to reduce decision-making. When energy is low, decisions feel heavy. Simplify choices. Pre-decide meals, clothing, or work blocks when possible. Reducing cognitive load preserves energy for essential actions. Reflection after disruption strengthens future resilience. Instead of focusing on what went wrong, ask what can be improved. Which habits survived stress? Which collapsed? What adjustments would make them stronger next time? Reflection turns disruption into growth. As this chapter ends, remember this truth. Consistency is not about controlling life. It is about adapting within it. Habits are not chains. They are supports. When life gets messy, Do not abandon your system. Shrink it. Simplify it. Return gently. Progress is not lost because of interruption. It is lost only when you stop returning. Chapter 11. Mastery is the result of daily refinement. Mastery is often misunderstood as talent or rare ability. We admire experts and assume they were born different, gifted in ways we are not. This belief is comforting because it excuses us from effort. But mastery is not a gift handed down at birth. It is the natural outcome of daily refinement, repeated long enough for skill and identity to merge. What separates beginners from masters is not passion alone, but attention. Beginners focus on outcomes. Masters focus on details. They return to fundamentals repeatedly, refining small elements others ignore. This refinement is not glamorous. It is repetitive, sometimes boring, and often invisible to outsiders. Yet it is precisely this quiet repetition that creates excellence. Daily refinement means showing up with intention. It is not about doing more. It is about doing better. Instead of increasing volume, you increase awareness. You notice mistakes sooner. You correct them gently. You experiment, adjust, and continue. This process compounds skill just as habits compound behavior. Each small improvement builds upon the last. One of the biggest barriers to mastery is impatience. People want to advance quickly, skipping stages of development. But skipping fundamentals creates fragility. When pressure increases, weak foundations collapse. Masters respect the process because they understand that strength comes from depth, not speed. Feedback is essential in refinement. Without feedback, repetition reinforces errors. Weak feedback repetition creates improvement. Feedback can come from reflection, tracking, mentors, or honest self. The source matters less than the willingness to listen. Those who seek feedback grow faster than those who avoid it. Another crucial element is humility. Mastery requires accepting that there is always more to learn. The moment someone believes they have arrived, growth slows. Humility keeps curiosity alive. Curiosity keeps practice meaningful. This mindset transforms repetition from drudgery into exploration. Refinement also requires rest. Growth does not occur only during effort. It occurs during recovery. Overworking leads to stagnation. Strategic rest allows integration. It deepens learning and prevents burnout. Masters respect limits, not as weaknesses, but as signals. Identity plays a powerful role here. When you see yourself as a learner rather than an expert, refinement feels natural. You are not defending an image. You are developing a craft. This reduces fear of mistakes. Mistakes become part of learning, not threats to success. Daily refinement reshapes time perception. Instead of rushing toward a distant goal, you invest in today's improvement. This creates satisfaction independent of external validation. Progress becomes intrinsic. You are motivated by growth itself. Mastery is also cumulative. Skills developed in one area transfer to others. Discipline learned through one habit strengthens others. Attention trained through practice sharpens thinking. The person you become through refinement carries those qualities everywhere. As this chapter closes, remember that mastery is not a destination. It is a way of living. It is the choice to refine today, regardless of recognition. Small improvements, repeated daily, create extraordinary ability over time. You do not become great by doing something once. You become great by refining it again and again until excellence feels natural. Chapter 12. Becoming the person who never stops becoming. At the end of every journey of change, there is a quiet realization. There is no final version of you waiting to be completed. Growth does not end. Habits do not reach a permanent finish line. Identity is not something you achieve once and then protect forever. It is something you practice. The most powerful outcome of this entire process is not a specific result, but the creation of a person who knows how to evolve. Many people believe that transformation has an endpoint. They imagine a day when discipline becomes effortless, focus never fades, and life feels permanently organized. This belief creates frustration because reality does not work that way. Life change. Responsibilities shift. Energy rises and falls. The goal is not to lock yourself into a rigid version of who you are, but to become adaptable without losing direction. The habits you have explored throughout this book are not meant to control you. They are meant to support you. When habits become too rigid, they break under pressure. When they remain flexible, they grow with you. True consistency is not about repeating the same actions forever. It is about repeating the commitment to align action with identity again and again as life evolves. At a deeper level, this process builds. You learn to notice when habits are serving you and when they need adjustment. You stop clinging to routines out of fear and start using them as tools. This awareness is a form of maturity. It allows you to change without losing yourself. One of the most meaningful shifts that occurs through habit-based living is self. Each time you show up, even imperfectly, you reinforce trust in yourself. This trust becomes the foundation for confidence. Not the loud kind, but the quiet kind that does not need constant reassurance. Confidence rooted in self-trust is resilient. It survives failure, change, and uncertainty. Another lasting outcome is clarity. As habits shape behavior and behavior shapes identity, values become visible. You stop guessing what matters to you. Your daily actions reveal it. This clarity simplifies this. When faced with choices, you ask not what is easiest or most impressive, but what aligns with who you are becoming. The journey also changes your relationship with time. Instead of feeling rushed or behind, you begin to think in seasons. Some seasons are for building, some are for maintaining, some are for resting and reflecting. This perspective reduces anxiety. You stop measuring your worth by short-term output and start valuing long-term direction. It is important to acknowledge that setbacks will continue to occur. Old habits may resurface. Motivation will fluctuate. These moments are not signs of failure. They are reminders that growth is ongoing. The difference now is that you have tools. You know how to return. You know how to adjust systems, shrink habits, and reconnect with identity. You are no longer starting from zero. Perhaps the most powerful realization is this: you are not chasing a better life. You are building a better way of living. Outcomes will come and go. Titles, achievements, and milestones will change, but the ability to shape your behavior intentionally remains. This ability is the true reward. As this final chapter closes, take a moment to reflect, not on how far you still have to go, but on how differently you now understand change. You do not need to wait for transformation. You practice it daily. You do not need to become someone else. You become more aligned with who you choose to be. The person you are becoming is not defined by perfection, but by persistence. Not by intensity, but by consistency. Not by a single breakthrough, but by a lifetime of small, meaningful choices. And that is a journey that never truly ends, only deepens.